Understanding the Self, Lesson 3, the Self as Cognitive Construct. These are our lesson objectives. First, identify the different ideas in psychology about the self. Second, create their own definition of the self based on the definitions from psychology. Third, analyze the effects of various factors identified in psychology in the formation of self. Now let us start. In confidence or in attempt to avoid further analytical discussions, a lot of people say, I am who I am. Yet this statement still begs the question, if you are who you are, then who are you that makes you who are you? As mentioned earlier, there are various definitions of the self and others similar or interchangeable in psychology. Simply put, self as the sense of personal identity and of who we are as individuals. William James was the one of the earliest psychologists to study the self, and he conceptualized the self as having two aspects, I and the me. The I is the thinking, acting, and feeling self. The me, on the other hand, is the physical characteristics as well as psychological capabilities that make who you are. Carl Rogers' theory of personality also used the same terms, the I, as the one who acts and decides, while the me is what you think or feel about yourself as an object. Other concepts similar to self is identity and self-concept. When we say identity, it is composed of one's personal characteristics, social roles and responsibilities, as well as affiliations that defines who one is. Second is self-concept, is basically what comes to your mind when you're asked about who you are. Self-identity and self-concept are not fixed in one time frame. For example, when asked about who you are, you can say, I was a varsity player in grade 5, which pertains to the past, a college student, which may be the present, and a future politician, which is the future. They are not also fixed for life, nor are they ever changing at every moment. Think of a malleable metal, strong and hard, but can be bent and molded in other shapes. Think about water. It can take any shape of the container. It can be solid, liquid, or gas form, but at its core, it is still the same elements. Carl Rogers captured this idea in his concept of self-schema, or our own organized system or collection of knowledge about who we are. Imagine an organized list or a diagram similar to the one below. For himself is composed of habits, family, religion, nationality. But the schema is not limited to the example in the diagram. It may also include your interests, your work, your course, your age, your name, your physical characteristics, and others. As you grow and adapt to the changes around you, they also change. But they are not passive receivers. They actively shape and reflect how you see, think, and feel about things. For example, when someone states your first name, even if he is not talking about you, your intention is drawn to him. If you have a French language and you hear someone using it, it catches your attention. If you consider yourself a book lover, a bookstore may always entice you out of all the stores in a mall. Theorists generally see the self and identity as mental constructs created and recreated in memory. Current researches point to the frontal lobe of the brain as the specific area in the brain associated with the processes concerning the self. Several psychologists, especially during the field's earlier development, followed this trend of thought, looking deeper into the mind of the person to theorize about the self, identity, self-concept, and in turn one's personality. The most influential of them is Sigmund Freud. Basically, Freud saw the self, its mental processes, and one's behavior as the results of the interaction between the ID, the ego, and the superego. However, as mentioned earlier, one cannot fully discount the fact of society and culture to the formation of the self, identity, and self-concept. Even as Freud and other theorists and researchers try to understand the person by digging deeper into the mind, they can fully discount the huge and important effects of the environment. As in the above-mentioned definitions of the self, social interaction always has a part to play in who we think we are. This is not nature versus nurture, but instead a nature and nurture perspective. Under the theory of symbolic interactionism, G.H. Mead argued that the self is created and developed through human interaction. Basically, there are at least three reasons why self and identity are social products. First, we do not create ourselves out of nothing. Society helps in creating the foundations of who we are, and even if we make our choices, we still operate in our social and historical context in one way or the other. Of course, you may transfer from one culture to another, but parts of who you were will still affect you, and you will also have to adapt to the new social context. Try looking at your definition of who you are and see where society had affected you. Second, whether we like to admit it or not, we actually need others to affirm and reinforce who we think we are. We also need them as reference points about our identity. Our interesting example is the social media interactions we have. In the case of Facebook, there are those who will consciously and unconsciously try to garner more likes and or positive reactions, and that can and will reinforce their self-concept. It is almost like a battle between who got more friends, more views, and trending topics. If one says he or she is a good singer but his or her performance and the evaluation of his or her audience says otherwise, that will have an effect on that person's idea of him or herself one way or another. Third, what we think is important to us may also have been influenced by what in our social or historical context. Education might be an important thing to your self-concept because you grow up in a family that values education. Money might be important to some because they may have grown in a poor family and realize how important money is in addressing certain needs like medical emergencies. Being a nurse or a lawyer can be a priority in your self-schemes because it is the in-demand course during your time. Social interaction and group affiliation therefore are vital factors in creating our self-concept, especially in the aspect of providing us with our social identity or our perception of who we are based on our membership to a certain group. It is also inevitable then that we can have several social identities, that those identities can overlap, and that we automatically play the rules as we interact with other groups. For example, you are a student yet you are also a member of a certain group of friends. You study because it is your role as a student, but you prefer to study with your friends and your study pattern changes when you are with your friends than when you do it alone. However, there are times when we are aware of our self-concepts, which is also called self-awareness. According to Carver and Spear, they identified two types of self that we can be aware of. First, the private self, or your internal standards and private thoughts and feelings. Second, the public self, or your public image, commonly geared towards having a good representation or good presentation of yourself to others. Self-awareness also presents us with at least three other self-schema: the actual, ideal, and old self. When we say actual self, it is who you are at the moment. Ideal self is who you like to be. Old self is who we think we should be. Example is that you are a student interested in basketball but is also academically challenged in most of your subjects. Your ideal self might be to practice more and play with varsity team but also pass your subjects as a responsible student. One is to find solution to such discrepancies in order to avoid agitation, rejection, or other negative emotions. In some instances, however, all three may be in line with one another. Self-awareness may be positive or negative depending on the circumstances and our next course of action. Self-awareness can keep you from doing something dangerous. It can help remind you that there is an exam tomorrow on one of your subjects when you are about to spend time playing computer games with your cousins, among others. In other instances, self-awareness can be too much. We are concerned about being observed and criticized by others, also known as self-consciousness. At other times, especially with large crowds, we may experience in the individuation or the loss of individual self-awareness and individual accountability in groups. A lot of people will attune themselves with the emotions of their group, and because the large crowd also provides some kind of anonymity, we may lessen our self-control and act in ways that we will not do when we are alone. A common example is a mass demonstration erupting into riot. Our group identity and self-awareness also has a great impact on our self-esteem, one of the common concepts associated with the self. It is defined as our own positive or negative perception or evaluation of ourselves. One of the ways in which our social relationship affects our self-esteem is through social comparisons. According to the social comparison theory, we learn about ourselves, the appropriateness of our behaviors, as well as our social status by comparing our aspects of ourselves with other people. Our downward social comparison is the more common type of comparing ourselves with others. As the name implies, we create positive self-concept by comparing ourselves with those who are worse off than us. By having the advantage, we are able to raise our self-esteem. Another comparison is the upward social comparison, which is comparing ourselves with those who are better off than us. While it can be a form of motivation for some, a lot of those who do this actually felt lower esteem as we highlight more of our weakness or iniquities. Take note that this occurs not only between individuals but also among groups. Thus, if a person's group is performing better and acknowledged more than the other group, then his or her self-esteem may also be heightened. Social comparison also entails that what is called self-evaluation maintenance theory, which states that we can feel threatened when someone outperforms us, especially when that person is close to us, like our friend or family. In this case, we usually react in three ways. First, we distance ourselves from that person or redefine our relationship with them. Some will resort to silent treatment, change of friends, while some may also redefine by being closer with that person, hoping that some association may give him or her a certain kind of acknowledgement also. Second, we may also reconsider the importance of the aspect or skill in which you were outperformed. Instead of quitting drawing, you might join seminars, practice more often, read books about it, add some elements in your drawing that makes it unique, and etc. Achieving your goal through hard work may increase your self-esteem too. However, in the attempt to increase or maintain self-esteem, some people become narcissistic. Narcissism is a trait characterized by overly high self-esteem, self-admiration, and self-centeredness. They're often charismatic because of how they take care of their image. Taking care of that image includes their interpersonal relationships, thus they will try to look for better partners, better acquaintances, as well as people who will appreciate them a lot. This makes them a bad romantic partner or friend since they engage in relationships only to serve themselves. Sometimes there is a thin line between high self-esteem and narcissism, and there are a lot of tests and measurements for self-esteem like Rosenberg scale, but the issue is that the result can be affected by the desire of the person to portray him or herself in a positive or advantageous way. In case you really want to take a test and find a numerical value or level for your self-esteem, try to be honest and objective about what you feel and see about yourself. Though self-esteem is a very important concept related to the self, studies have shown that it only has a correlation, not causality, to positive outputs and outlook. It can be argued that high or healthy self-esteem may result to an overall good personality, but it is not, and should not be the only source of a person's healthy perspectives of him or herself. People with high self-esteem are commonly described as outgoing, adventurous, and adaptable in a lot of situations. They also initiate activities and building relationship with people. However, they may also dismiss other activities that does not conform to their self-concept or boost their self-esteem. They may also be bullies and experiment on abusive behaviors with drugs, alcohol, and sex. This quality in the behavior and attitudes only proves that above-mentioned correlation. Bumister, Smart, and Bowden, in their research on self-esteem, concluded that programs, activities, and parenting styles to boost self-esteem should only be for rewarding good behavior and other achievements, and not for the purpose of merely trying to make children feel better about themselves or to appease them when they get angry or sad. Again, this quality in the behavior and attitudes only proves that above-mentioned correlation. Bomister, Smart, and Bowden in their research on self-esteem concluded that programs, activities, and parenting styles to boost self-esteem should only be for rewarding good behavior and other achievements, and not for the purpose of merely trying to make children feel better about themselves or to appease them when they get angry or sad. Now, for application and assessment, you are going to do a research and list 10 things to do in order to boost your self-esteem or improve your self-concept. Cite your sources as well. Analyze which of those tips are more likely to backfire and make someone conceited or narcissistic, and revise them in order to make statements both helpful to the individuals as well as society in general. Do not forget to turn in your answers in Google Classroom. And most of all, good luck and be honest with your answers. Give thanks because He's given.